Welcome back to Satori Sounds. In today's episode, Josh and I are exploring the complex nature of ego, its definitions, misconceptions, and its role in ambition, creativity, and personal growth.
I'm glad you mentioned that. All of this is about me.
Me? Just you?
Just me. It always has been.
My apologies,
My
my dear boy.
Good sir. Good sir, I didn't realise. It's true. That is ego. It's interesting because for the last, I'd say, little while now, the concept of ego has been quite unfashionable, hasn't it?
It's very true. Well, I think also the line of when something does become your ego has been blurred as well. I think personal opinions or personal obsession as well sometimes can be misconstrued as ego.
Yeah, and I think that does result from a kind of misframing of the definitions of ego, because lots of people have very different takes on ego. So if you to look at the classic Freudian dynamic definition of ego, or psychodynamic rather than Freudian dynamic, but Freud himself is the father of psychodynamic psychology. It was very much this idea of uncontrollable and unchecked urges that it would just usher forth, seeking to do things, kind of desires and acting upon those. And then we also got Buddhist ideas, Zen Buddhist ideas of what ego is and how effectively it relates to kind of a sense of attachment to self. And I suppose people have begun to fuse those ideas in a large part, particularly in the modern world. So,
Yeah. No, it's interesting. That modern interpretation, I think, has veered from, as you say, those two descriptions of it. And I think people's own pursuit of something can be misconstrued as that ego. You know, I've spoken to a lot of people who will go, well, your ideas are completely,
completely egotistical.
Yeah, egotistical. But that's the thing, right? You have an idea, and you have to have this self-belief, right, that you can attain it. You don't necessarily know how you might progress towards that. So, for instance, starting my own company, a lot of people are like, hey, you think you're good enough to do that in the first place? People are like, well, that's just a dream. You can't achieve that. People can misconstrue that as an element of ego, and I think actually you have to back yourself in some ways, which maybe that can be interpreted as ego, but I guess what I'm saying from that is that people's definition of ego has become misconstrued.
Absolutely, and I do think it comes back to those kind of generalised misgivings that we hear now. They're very fashionable now.
Yeah.
To say, even terms like ego death, but I find that interesting that someone actually said to you, that's just a dream.
I think
that's crazy.
Well, I think it's an interesting interpretation because we might see it as crazy, but what I've come to realise is that actually that's not a path that someone else can necessarily see or even believe in. And so it's so detached from their reality that actually they can't fathom it, and therefore if they can label it as something like that, it is easier to interpret.
But even that process of labelling someone else's ideas and dreams as impossible is quite an egotistical notion. I'm telling you that's impossible because I believe it's impossible, so you shouldn't do it. So that, at the same time, as while calling you egotistical, they're engaging in quite an egotistical practice, not recognising the sense of self. I don't think that's possible. I don't think I can do that, and exploring that themselves. They're taking that on you. That's why I think that's crazy.
I hadn't looked at it from that perspective. Actually,
I think it's quite wild.
It's an interesting one, but I think you have to back yourself in many ways, and actually I don't think people should be upset by that. I think there's an element of pride that you want to give something a go, something that is maybe a bit more outlandish, and I think there's a balance from it, right? For instance, if the business ultimately becomes successful, if I then sit there and go, look, I proved you all wrong and look how great I am, then I can understand how you slip into that egotistical nature.
I mean, is that egotistical, or is it, that's the question. When does it truly become a sense of ego?
When I think I'm better than you.
Think? You told me that you knew.
We're recording.
Right. Of course, we've got to behave. I find it interesting, and particularly that concept of dreams. It's not, the question is never should I dream. It's how big you should dream. And I think ego is purely involved in that ambition. In many regards, it drives you forward to some degree, and we've got so used to seeing it as almost this complete negative. It's a kind of an evil almost. A modern societal evil in many regards, I think. That's wrong.
I wouldn't disagree. I think it's like, who are you to have ideas and aspirations, right?
These ideas are above your station.
Well, And station hierarchical structures, I think, is a different conversation. But I think for people who've got dreams and ideas, it is nowadays. People are kind of scared by that. Like, oh, you want to go and do this, or you want to go and do that. I think you can also come around to the people that maybe you're around sometimes.
That's helpful. That's true.
You know, there's always the statement that you are the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most of your time around, and actually...
Oh, we're cooked.
We're so cooked.
It's over.
But if you're hanging around with people who have that ideology and you have these ideas, then maybe that's actually their own constraints that they've bound themselves to. They think that is egotistical because they can't see or understand how you might be able to achieve something like that.
I can understand that, and I suppose in many regards it comes back to the same thing you mentioned a second ago. By doing that, you're engaging in the ultimate egotistical practice of saying, this is the confines of reality. Almost. I can't see that, so you're not going to do it. And I think, you cannot deviate from what I think. And that in itself is a height of egotisticality. So, it's very, very perverse in many ways, I think.
It's an interesting point you say that there is that you can't, they can't fathom anything by their view.
I didn't use that word.
Well, okay, that's my interpretation of what you said. But we're kind of hinting at that, is that people are very fixed in maybe some of those ideologies and views, and actually that element of perspective, I think is value in that. People looking at it differently. Really, why should we all think the same? I don't think that's ego.
Oh, no, neither do I. And I think the reality is that to kind of enjoy another perspective, the only way that you can kind of take that on board and really interrogate that is by bringing a sense of ego to it. What do I already know? What do I already think? Where does that fit? Where does that align? If you've kind of developed a sense of nothingness and you're going for no ego, well, how are you really going to engage with that process is the real question. So, I think there are a lot of very fashionable trends that say, go for self, strive for ego death, be nothingness. And while I can see the benefit of that as another perspective, the question becomes, well, what's left?
Funny enough, I was thinking that, well, what if all of that's stripped back and you're not so-called chasing anything, then what is it for your path of existence? And there are perspectives that have that view. To me, I think there is a balance to be struck. I think you can't be always so consumed that it does become an egotistical thing of this is what I'm going to become. But at the same time, if you look at anyone who's achieved an element of so-called greatness, athletes or even like the medical fields or scientific breakthroughs, everything that's become a breakthrough was because it wasn't seen as possible beforehand. And so actually, if we have to let go of everything, how do we then progress?
I think this is the thing I often consider is when you think about the idea of egotism being egotistical, is almost one of the factors or elements of creativity. You've had to start somewhere. How do I see the world now? I think we can do this. I think we can run that experiment, or we can design that product, or we can write that book. You've got to engage with it to some degree to get something else out of it. You have to put yourself into the thing that you are doing. And that, think about art as a concept. You're often talking about the artists, like say Van Gogh. They put their sense of self, their suffering, their emotions into their art to create something bigger than themselves. And I think if you remove that, what are you going to make? You can't make something from nothing.
Yeah, what's the structure? And also to that, they are communicating their feelings and their woes, but also they had an idea.
Who are they to tell me their feelings and their woes? I don't care.
I don't want to hear your opinion.
That's disgusting. No, but
I was talking. This is about me.
All of this right now is about me. Well, you're right. I did interrupt. Please continue. No.
No, it's so true. Yeah. It's so true.
I've interrupted your train of thought now.
The train of thought. Well, now it's more about you. It's in my head.
It's true.
You've achieved your objectives. No, you were
ego dominant.
You're talking about the idea of these creatives and them kind of purveying their message in different ways, right? And the bit that's interesting for me for art and creativity is that they have an idea sometimes of where they want to go, but there's no way of knowing how to achieve it. If you look at how drawings built up and their perspectives, and you watch something create something on a piece of paper, and even to maybe the viewer immediately it's not apparent, of where they're ending up, but there is a construct in that person's mind of this is the narrative I want to portray, or this is the message, and they're kind of guiding themselves through to it. And what's interesting for me was starting a business is actually very similar in a way, because you know you want to create this thing, but you don't really know how to get there.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the same endeavour. It's the root, I suppose, at it is creativity, and that is generally. I think creativity is a combination of a number of factors, but being egotistical is one of them almost. Or having a sense of ego, a healthy sense of ego, is one of them in terms of kind of deriving and making your ambitions come to fruition. And they often say reasonable people don't make change. That doesn't mean be difficult, but it says if you are willing to accept things as they are so completely and not do something differently, then you're not going to make any change. You've just accepted reality for what it is.
And what's funny is, to me, that alternative is scarier than the idea of change, because I think, you wouldn't have feelings if you didn't think pursuing one of these endeavours isn't scary, right? I actually do think your goals and your ambitions should scare you. Now, I think people could argue, well, isn't that an egotistical way of looking at it? Those are...
You narcissist.
Yeah. Why would you have such big goals and ideas? But I think, to me, there's value in that, because actually, I don't think there's a healthier pursuit than pursuing something that you believe in that sense, right?
Yeah.
And to me, if you can take that and funnel it into something that people need and want, and you're not doing it from your self-benefit, only your self-benefit, because naturally you have to benefit from it, right? You have to make money, you have to enjoy within reason what you're doing. But if you're looking at that from a larger perspective, to me that isn't an egotistical viewpoint in the generalist sense.
No. I guess it's a healthy sense and balance of ego, I would say, and I guess in many ways a really good way of looking at it is a simile. It's like a fire. If you feed it correctly and you maintain it correctly, it will keep you warm. If you let it burn out of control, it will consume everything around you, and including yourself. And I think largely that's how you've got to pursue, consider it. If you are thinking, am I egotistical or not? What are you giving yourself? What are you doing for yourself and not maybe doing for others? What's the line? Is it being all-consuming, or is it being sort of keeping you warm? And of course there is the inverse, where you might be doing too much for others. You're engaging in that egoless activity where you're not doing anything all the time, and then your fire is very dwindling.
So you're not watching your fire and it can dwindle or peter out, right? And actually, expanding on that metaphor, relighting the fire sometimes is even harder.
Relight my fire.
Cue the interlude.
Yeah, need a break. I've decided we're finished.
Oh.
No, you're right. I think people pleasing is a big part of letting your fire go out in many regards. Seeking to continually serve others without nourishing yourself.
Which is that in the inverse of an ego, because you're too busy serving others? Is that the way?
I don't know. I mean, there's a couple of ways to slice it. Because if you think about why we people please, we want others to like us. So in some, it's not a secret, but it's true. We're worried about others casting some kind of judgment or disliking us, and in many regards, there is a bit of an egotistical edge to that.
Yeah.
I want you to be engaged with me. And I suppose, you could say that actually there is that element of I just want to continue to give and grow other people, and not myself. And there's that self-neglect, and there's that other side. Your ego's kind of running unchecked. That person doesn't like you need them to like you. Yeah. So, in many regards, it's too difficult.
It is, but one of the key words I think you put there was judgment.
Judgment, oof.
And actually, I think that weighs on a lot of people, right? It's that fear of judgment. Well, I can't express my views and my opinions because someone may judge me for it.
Yeah.
And actually, yes, as we talked about, if you're completely doing it for the self on that one extreme, maybe you are being egotistical, but actually, you shouldn't be afraid of having views or opinions.
Or being a human being.
Or being a human being and understanding others.
I mean, it's interesting that you say that. I suppose, are you familiar with the sort of CBT definition of social anxiety? How it formulates, kind of understands it. At its core is this process of seeing yourself as what they CBT labels as a social object. And that social object is so concerned with being perceived negatively, judged, that it seeks to do all these other things to I suppose, obviate that. And obviously this typically will look like blushing, embarrassment, avoiding social situations, stuff like that. But I suppose we all experience some degree of processing ourselves as a special object.
Yeah.
So we might inadvertently engage in that process that you're naming there. I don't want to be judged, so what I'm not going to do is share my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm going to fall in line with what everyone else says because it's safer. They're not going to come down and castigate me or tell me that my ideas are too big or my dreams are outlandish.
It's true. It is, and that's uncomfortable, isn't it, in its way? Because actually, there's tension in that. Because if you do want to fit in, but also you want to have your viewpoint, then that in itself can create an element of tension. So,
no discomfort for me. Everything I do is outlandish.
that right there, people.
Clip that.
His ego. We got him. He's on recording.
Oh goodness! On a cloudy day in Devonshire Beach, we've got that ego. It's all a front.
It's all the fresh air.
It's true. It's got to my head. Oh goodness gracious!
Taming the ego. Taming the ego. That's so. That's an interesting one then. So, at what point we've talked about kind of both ends of that, but I don't think there is necessarily a clear line where you can go, that is now being egotistical, right? Because as we've talked about, there's those factors of judgment, there's those factors of ideas and beliefs, there's also then wanting to fit into that so-called social structure. And I think, deep-rooted cultures also interpret it differently, right? There's people talk about the American dream on one hand. Now, from an outsider's perspective, you could go, well, Christ, that's egotistical, but culturally to them, that is important, right? And then you've got the British stiff upper lip of what everyone thinks, oh, you're British, you think you're better than us.
What I was going to say is, I know there's no research behind this, there's no philosophical concepts I have seen to validate this, it's just opinion. Oh dear.
There's a disclaimer at the bottom of the screen right now.
This is BS. No, but often I think when we think about those ideas of, oh, that person's egotistical or not, it's often defined generally by their outcomes. If someone does something, take Steve Jobs, what was he doing? He was making an iPhone. I suppose if he sat there and told you that, you'd be like, oh, you're pretty full of yourself.
Yeah.
But it worked, so we're all like,
that's true.
What a guy. And I think generally speaking, very generally speaking, and very reductionally,
another disclaimer.
It's generally based upon, have you acted upon and achieved the things that you say you were going to achieve? So it's almost like, okay. And I suppose in Thailand they have this thing as well, it's quite interesting. They go, you said you could do that thing while drunk, okay? Unbridled ego throughout. Now that you're sober, I want you to do it. So if you said in a bar in Thailand, I can do 7 backflips in a row without throwing up or without falling over, they go, okay, we'll see you in the morning. Dush. Next morning, you said you could do 7 backflips.
I don't think I can do 1 backflip.
Not yet. Not yet.
That's true. Well, there you go.
But I suppose it's that same principle. The outcome is what defines that to some degree, and that's quite external. But it's a very generalist view.
Yeah, very generalist. But that is true, right? You were talking about creativity and Steve Jobs and that process, and I think that's a really good example because it's most people know about Apple and their kind of history, right? But you look at it and you go, that level of progression wouldn't have happened without a generalized view of someone having an ego. And I think, Elon Musk is another fantastic example of that, rightly or wrongly in his beliefs, views, and what everyone thinks. You look at his progression of when he said, well, we're going to occupy Mars. Everyone's like, you're a nutter, right? And then the reduction of that was actually one of the first things we're going to do is, can we reuse a spaceship, right? Because space flight is so expensive. People are like, we can't do that. You can't do that. That doesn't work. And actually that small iteration of progression and this undeniable stack of proof that he is progressively building, people start to wither and go, oh, well, maybe that isn't ego because, hold on, he's done it. Oh, and actually that benefits us.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting when the value is started to be perceived by people. I think that is also where people's interpretation changes and the ego maybe, or people's perception of an ego starts to dissipate.
So this kind of question of utilitarian benefit almost. Now, if it benefits enough people as an outcome, that it is no longer an egotistical action. And I find that interesting.
The greater good.
The greater good. It's interesting, even if those things are inverted, people still say inadvertently done. That you've done an action in many regards and it's happened to benefit the wider society. Even if that wasn't your intention, say, I don't know, a scientist makes a great discovery and they're just doing it to prove that they can do it, and it just ends up benefiting everyone else, we would go, oh wow, he was a great member of the human race. But he didn't care about doing that particular discovery necessarily for everyone else. It may be just for him, and I haven't got an example of that. But I'm saying it's funny how, again, the outcome dictates how we interpret that. You know, you take Mary Shelley with the discovering of X-ray. We would think, oh yeah, she's a wonderful woman, she did that. Obviously, shout out to any historians that know more about Mary Shelley than I do, but if she was sitting there from an egotistical point of view, looking to prove that women can contribute to science, we know they can, she didn't necessarily do it to benefit everyone else, per se. She was just doing it to make a discovery. And that's kind of, and lots of scientists fall into that category. I don't know why Mary Shelley was the first one to pop. I'd say Mary Shelley, it's not Mary Shelley.
Mary Shelley? No, it's not.
I can't
I don't
remember.
know who it is now.
Oh my god, that's so embarrassing. Mary Shelley's the writer of Frankenstein.
We can edit that.
Yeah, we're gonna have to.
No.
You go.
But your point there, right? I think your point there is that actually...
I can't remember. It's going to bother me.
Just cut the recording at X minutes in.
Yeah, go do some Googling.
You can't Google it out here. I think your point's well made though, right? The point, we'll have to correct the name, and we can do that in the show notes, but your point around that of the perceived benefit, there are good examples I think out there, right? Like Thomas Edison with electricity and the light bulb. But what's interesting about, I think, about all of those is that, as you say, people have created something that people thought wasn't possible, and you can put athletes in that same category, you can put the light bulb in that same category, but at once upon a time, I imagine all of those people, someone somewhere would have thought, well, that's egotistical, and yet now it's a benefit, and so everyone sees it.
You know, you hear terms like, you're the GOAT, got some time.
Oh, thank you.
Ego. You know, and I think you're right. There's so many examples of that in modern history. So you take Michael Jordan as a basketball player, wasn't particularly tall. I don't think he even made his high school team initially.
Really?
Yeah, had to go back and practice. Loads and loads. And he just practiced over and over again. Say to his father, I'm going to do this. And he did it. But if you'd heard him, you'd have been like, that young man's got ambition. Touch arrogant though, isn't he? You wouldn't have necessarily believed it. Now,
arrogance is an interesting term actually, because when does we've got ambition, arrogance, and then egotistical that sits around that. And I think ambition and arrogance is an interesting one, because I think you do have to have ambition in many ways, right?
Of course.
You've got to want to achieve. I think there's no greater pursuit, and if you're going to stay disciplined, I think you're going to have that ambition or that self-belief, right? Michael Phelps, another athlete.
Mary Curie.
Mary Curie. There you go.
There it was.
He's not been listening the whole time.
Yeah, I don't care what you're talking about. I'm trying to rifle through my files in my head to think who that was. No, you're all right. When does it come and tip into the two?
Ambition and arrogance, because Michael Phelps, right, is well known for visualising his perfect swim. Tiger Woods hitting the perfect shot, right? Now, would you go, well, that's egotistical for thinking you could hit the perfect shot?
Only if they could do it.
And that's the thing, it's that balance. So I think what we're saying, the key message is you can have an ego, just prove it.
Well, no, prove it. I think the way I've come to see it, just in this conversation, or the way I visualise it, is you've got ambition, arrogance, egotism, dreaming, all of these words, and they basically are surrounding it. Imagine it's a wheel, and you've got ego in the middle. And at any point you can fall into one of these areas, but it's knowing when you're beginning to fall into those areas. So that arrogance is, I'm better than you.
Thank you. Thank you for a minute.
I mean, you told me that yesterday anyway.
Oh. No, but you're right. I think you are right. And I think people shouldn't be ashamed of it, really, because I think the progression, and everybody's different, right, in their own way, and they've got different views, different opinions, different ways of thinking. And actually, for some of these complex issues that we've achieved, I know I keep naming the point, but people knowing that they were going to try and create something but not knowing how to do it was key. But you also pointed out, if you're going to use that analogy, is that there is this ego, but people's awareness of where they're drifting into maybe each of those and keeping themselves in check. Like, I remember when I signed my first client, and inside of me, it was like, come on. Now the old me...
So was that pride, do you think?
Yeah, that's pride and my own belief back in myself, going, I knew I could do this. But I didn't then go onto social media and be like, I've secured my first client.
Yes, you did. I remember your Facebook post. You gave yourself 5 stars.
5 stars. Create a page and just self-validated.
Ollie is great.
But I think that to me is where the difference is, because a lot of these people are just like, oh, and this is a farcical example, but it kind of plays to my point. When Elon Musk became the richest man in the world, someone tagged him on Twitter and was like, "Oh, you're now the richest man in the world," and he went, "Oh, cool, back to work, and get on with it." And you can read into that different ways, but the point I guess I'm projecting there is that actually people, as you were saying, don't do it for that reason, or that isn't really the reason they do it. That is maybe a byproduct. Whereas someone who is completely egotistical would be like, "Look at me, look how great I am."
Yeah. Well, you're almost falling into adoration, demanding adoration at that point. Look at me, look how great I am. And I suppose that's a complete change of subject almost. I think having that healthy sense of ego, and someone else's got a healthy sense of ego, can almost drive betterment.
Mm-hmm.
So you think about most progress, competitive progress, maybe in sports, maybe in industry, at some point, someone's gone, I need to do better than that person in that particular situation, or their design or whatever, I suppose.
Yeah.
Think about Ford versus Ferrari. Think about any great sports rivalry.
Niki Lauda and
James Hunt.
Hunt.
Yeah, absolutely. F1's full of them.
Ronaldo,
Big
Messi,
egos.
I guess. Probably.
Yeah, almost. They're a strange pair, but yeah, you're on the right track. Or
Us.
Us.
I'm
What do you mean? I'm the LeBron James of this podcast.
of this podcast. It's all me.
Of podcasting. Without me, you're nothing. You go. But no, it's true. Sometimes, in order to drive development, you need competition. And in order to get that competition, you have to have people who have that healthy sense of ambition, which is an egotistical principle, an ego-central principle. So that's interesting. A sense of self.
Yeah. No, I think that's very true, competition-wise, right? Because actually, it also forces you to be better. Because you're constantly, getting the next step up. Well, no, I need to do this, I need to do that. And there, of course, is a balance, right? When it starts coming at the expense of other things like friendships, family,
human
health,
rights.
everything else. Whoa, I was thinking human friends and family and health, but it's we're going.
Well, some of those are human rights, to be fair. Yeah.
No,
Oh,
no, you're right.
Yeah.
I'm completely
Yeah, no, I'm out here making silly jokes.
Profanity.
Absolutely, but I do agree. And another avenue I think to begin to think about when we think about ego is it helps us know when something is wrong to some degree. And sort of in therapeutic principles and philosophical principles, we use a term, CBT I should say, and sort of diagnosing certain things like OCD. We use a term called ego-dystonic.
Ego-dystonic.
No. So it's this idea where the thing that we're confronted with, be it a thought or an image or a compulsion, it disgusts us. We don't want to do that. We go, oh, that's horrible. I don't want to do that. But to have that, you have to have that sense of ego. And obviously, OCD is very different. It's very disabling. But most human adults will have that. There will be things that are ego-dystonic, values that they do not agree with.
Yeah.
And you think about when you read the news and you see images of, say, maybe children being harmed in a bombing, or you see maybe people helping other people. That's the opposite of the ego-dystonic. You might go out, providing you're not disgusted by that, you will go, wow, I really admire that. That aligns with my values and image. But that comes from a sense of ego. So for me to recognise the feats that you're doing well, I have to know a sense of myself almost. Mm-hmm. For me to recognise the sense of people doing wrong, I have to know what I don't like, that sense of self. Well, my sense of ego is kicking in right now that we should get out of the potential rain and go watch the rugby. What do you think?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Good plan.
But I just need to make this last point about me.
Is this intentional?
Oh, yeah.